What's going on, fellow alchemists? Welcome to Astrology. Today we're talking about Saturn in the 11th house. We almost wrapping up this series of Saturn through the houses. And that being said, I hope you're all doing alright and the world isn't too chaotic despite everything that is going on. Just a big thank you to all my new subscribers. Thank you so much. My channel is growing quite exponentially and I'm quite grateful for that. But putting that aside, just a big thank you anyway. And I really hope that these videos are helping you in interpreting and reading your own birth chart. And so let's just get into it. It is Saturn in the 11th house. So Saturn sitting in the 11th house, what does this mean if you have this placement in your birth chart? Remember, the 11th house is ruled over by Aquarius. The 11th house in Vedic astrology is called the 11th house of gains. In tropical astrology, this is the public arena. This is the area where you make your public debut. So what the 11th house is about is in esoteric astrology is it pulls from the ray or the third ray of active intelligence. This is Brahman in Theosophy. And this active intelligence is one of the main rays in esoteric astrology. There's 3 rays, but they do get broken down further into 7. And the third ray is about the duality and the concept of rationality in our solar system. So this is all of the intellectual properties is summing up and being used and utilized in order to bring one form of specific transmutation into another one. So this is to bring a form from one form into another through the process of transmutation. And so whenever a sign or a planet pulls from a specific ray, those themes, the theme of that ray really takes center stage. And in this case, it is active intelligence when we're dealing with Aquarius or when we're dealing with the 11th house. Remember, Aquarius is the traditional ruler of the 11th house, but this doesn't necessarily mean that your 11th house is sitting under Aquarius. But if you want to get a broader scope of what's going on in your 11th house, it's always good to also look at what's sitting underneath the sign of Aquarius. So are there any planets sitting underneath your sign that has Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, and are there any planets in there? Because that can also have an effect or a broader effect on the 11th house, regardless of where it's sitting. So that being said, Saturn actually rules in the 11th house. Remember, we call the day house, we call Aquarius the day house for Saturn, and Capricorn is the night house. So in the night house, that's where Saturn lays down the law. Saturn is rigid. Saturn is not prepared to play around, is not prepared to toy with anyone. Saturn is in charge, and that's the end of the story. But when you go into Aquarius, the day house, this is where you see the harvest of Saturn. This is the Saturnalia. This is the celebration. This is the absolute enjoyment of the wonders and gifts of the God of the Golden Age. Now, that being said, this is a very good position, a very good placement then if you have it in the 11th house or in Aquarius. This is a very good position for Saturn because what this provides is that Saturn is the god of the Golden Age. The Golden Age, in this case, I'm referring to the 4th Atlantean root race. Now, root race doesn't mean ethnic races. This means our spiritual metaphysical evolution. And so in that period of the 4th root race, we as humanity came into the culmination of our spiritual journey, and we started to descend further down into the descending arc, and that is a reference to Theosophy, and we found a more physical existence in the 5th root races, which is what we're currently in at present. And so in the 5th root race, it's all about our physical senses, our physical domain, but the 4th root race was all about the spirituality. And why I mention that is because Saturn sat as the head god of the pantheon of that period. Saturn, Balhamon, according to the Phoenicians and the Carthaginians, this god is about purification. Regardless of what you hear in literature or modern commercial literature, all you hear about is this god is about, this planet is about limitation and delay. And whilst that is there and it's a very, very prominent role, it's one of the very prominent characteristics of this planet, the whole point of that is so that it can purify. Remember, it's about time. It is the god of time. It monitors and initiates specific stages in your life so that when you finally come to the culmination of your life, The hope is that your soul has achieved what it needs to achieve here on planet Earth. And Saturn is the one who sets the time. Saturn is also the one who purifies all the non-authentic, all the superficial aspects that you're trying to deal with, and removes them and completely replaces them with the things that are authentic, or the things that are based in reality and that you really need in order to prosper. So when it sits in the 11th house, now that I'm finally here, what happens is Saturn is purifying the 11th house. And if the 11th house is about your people, your community, it's about service to humanity, it's about your gains. Now, gains doesn't always necessarily mean monetary gains, because when we talk about monetary gains, a lot of the time we look at either the 8th house or we're looking at the 2nd house. The 2nd house in particular, because that's about monetary and financial gains, but in the 11th house, we're talking about your gains. Now, remember, gains is such a varied term and definition for gains. This could be gains of friends, gains of specific individuals who bring in specific information. This can be financial gains. This can be gains through food or sustenance of some form. So in Saturn, when Saturn's in the 11th house, Saturn grants you these. Because remember, in the 11th house, Aquarius, Saturn is the god of harvest, not the god that we are so frightened of when he's sitting in Capricorn. This is the god of harvest in the 11th house. This is where the bounty comes out. This is where the bounty is given. But the delay and limitation works in such that it is a thing that builds up, it culminates, it builds up, it has to use that energy and eventually will reveal itself to you, but it takes time. It's not going to immediately pop up, you know. So the whole thing here is about using that patience, using that durability and relentless behavior that Saturn can usher into this aspect or this part of your life, and use that to work towards ushering in and allowing for the doorway to open where Saturn finally gives you the bounty, because that's what it's about, the bounty, the enjoyment, the acquirement of knowledge, the acquirement of people, the acquirement of things. That is why it is a house of gains. That is why in the 11th house Saturn is exalted, and this is a very, very prominent position to have Saturn sitting in. So fellow alchemists, I hope you got something out of that. Please don't forget to subscribe if you did. Drop a like down below. Go into the comment section down below. Tell us what it's like having Saturn in the 11th house for you. If you feel that I skipped anything or want me to talk on that, you know, you can always send me an email or find me on, drop me down in the comments and find me down there. And I'll see you in the next one when I do Saturn in the 12th house. So goodbye and take good care of yourself.